Welcome, travelers. The lights are dimming, but the story remains. Tonight, we drift across the dreaming lands of Spira, where ocean mists cradle the ruins of vanished cities and distant hymns echo over endless tides. This is not a timeline. It is a retelling, shaped from truth, but spoken like legend. The night is long, the fire is low. Let us begin. The sky above Zanarkand was always a promise. Electric light latticed the city, pulsing neon blue and white as dusk settled. The crowd's roar filled the concourse, low, thunderous, ritual. Tidus moved through it, lifted by recognition and the sharp scent of fried fish cakes and salt ozone. This was home. A high-frequency chime rippled across the stadium's loudspeakers. The blitzball prelude, half national anthem, half superstition. Somewhere beneath the cheers, the ocean's hum thickened, imperceptibly at first. Something older than cities stirred beneath the bay. Tidus's steps slowed near the railing. He leaned into the mist rising from the lower decks, tracing the players' lineup projected above. His own face stared back, animated and larger than life, the iconography of victory. But something twisted inside him, a knot of nausea maybe, or something more ancestral, something pulled from blood memory. The crowd screamed his name. He smiled anyway. For the first time since Zanarkand, Tidus noticed the taste of ordinary rain. A drop struck his shoulder, then another, but the weather was clear. He looked up. Tidus remembered the crowd not by faces, but by rhythm. 1,000 clapping hands, synchronized into a single living drumbeat, echoing off the hollowed neon bones of Zanarkand's Colosseum. They shouted his name like a spell, each syllable launching another pulse of adrenaline through his chest. Every glance from the crowd, every child with a jersey, every digital billboard flashing his slow-motion spin shot, it all said the same thing. You are real. You are right. You belong. The night felt eternal then, not by darkness, but by certainty. The way Zanarkand lit itself from within, casting no shadows. The way people believed the power grid would hum forever. The city had no silence. Even the sea outside murmured like a polite guest behind thick, crystalline barriers. Tidus jogged out into the stadium under strobes of digital flame and applause. Behind his visor, he grinned. Not for the cameras, not for the fans, but because in this moment, all narratives agreed. The hero was here. Victory was inevitable. Then came the fracture. A crackling distortion rippled the air, as if the very geometry of the arena twisted. The ball never left his hand. 1 second it was game time. The next, the scoreboard melted, the sky deepened to oil black, and something huge groaned from below the earth. Auron was already moving. "Come," he said, his coat snapping like a war banner. "It begins." Tidus hesitated. The crowd was gone, replaced by figures running and vanishing into mist. Screens died one by one. What remained of the stadium became a cathedral of noise and wind, scaffolding trembling under something unseen. He followed Auron into the abyss. They didn't descend stairs. They were pulled, falling upward into impossible angles, the very notion of direction breaking apart. Light twisted, water inverted. A wall of force surged through them, not liquid, but memory liquefied. The moment lasted forever, or maybe it lasted one heartbeat. He awoke to silence, heavy and old. Stone walls pressed in around him, the air thick with mildew and the tang of rusted steel. Barge Temple's ruins did not care for applause. The sea slapped against broken columns like a dying metronome. The glamour was gone. Tidus vomited seawater and tried to stand. His muscles screamed in unfamiliar gravity. The ground was solid, but wrong. The light was dim, ungenerated, sun-formed. No power grid, no city, no home. Tidus reached into his jacket. The pocket yielded a single spiral-bladed shell, small, like a child's toy, once used for team rituals. He turned it in his fingers, not for comfort, for proof. The sea whispered around him, not blue, but green and heavy, not welcoming, but watching. Then came a voice, sharp, clipped, mechanical. "Stay still." Tidus whipped around. 3 figures emerged in salvager suits, flashlights cutting swaths through brine and ruin. One was smaller, her voice more cautious, more human. "Don't shoot. He's not Yevonite, just wet." Riku. She knelt beside Tidus, examining his uniform like an artifact. Her goggles clicked. "Zanarkand, huh?" Tidus blinked. "You know it?" "No." A faint smile. "But you say it like it still matters." Riku helped him stand. Her hands were rough from work, not war. Her presence didn't soothe. It grounded. Tidus noticed. He was shivering. "Breathe," she said, handing him a strip of synth-dried fruit. "Eat, survive, cry later." It wasn't kindness. It was protocol. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in the world, but inside Tidus. A crack formed in his certainty. Not grief yet, just absence. He followed them into the wreckage of Barge, the shell still clutched in his palm. A city of memory, dissolved by truth. They moved through Barge Temple's drowned skeleton with practiced detachment, the Albed team sweeping arcs of flashlight and sonar, like divers carving meaning from ruin. Riku led, voice low through the comms. Tidus followed, too stunned to ask questions, too proud to let panic rule his face. Salt-crusted pillars arched above them like drowned cathedrals. Corroded murals peeled off in sheets, revealing a script he couldn't read. In his world, temples were stylized attractions, clean, symmetrical, mapped in light. This place felt older than permission, as though the sea itself had declared it forbidden. He stumbled over a half-submerged stair. Riku caught his arm, steadying him. "You okay?" "I don't know what this is." Her goggles gleamed in the half-light. "Neither do we. But we don't pretend it isn't real." That answer wasn't satisfying, but it didn't lie. They passed through a chamber where fireflies drifted like lost fireflies, blue, sentient, unsettled. Tidus felt them brushing the edges of thought, probing for memory. His father's voice surfaced unbidden. "Nothing's permanent, kid. Not fame, not home, just the water." He clenched his fists. They paused near a crumbled altar. One of the salvagers retrieved a sealed sphere from a broken pedestal. Its faint glow pulsed in rhythm with the waves. Riku studied it, then looked at Tidus. "You sure you're not dreaming?" "I've never dreamed anything that smelled this bad." Her laugh startled him, short, sharp, genuine. It echoed strangely in the ruined space, made it feel less like a tomb. She offered a gloved hand. "Riku, He took it. Tidus. The handshake was brief, but it rewrote something. Anchor laid where identity had begun to float. She turned away, already giving orders in Albed, but her presence had carved a fault line through his disorientation. Not clarity, just motion. One of the team pointed to a breach in the wall. Coral and steel buckled inward, revealing an underwater tunnel. Beyond it, the ocean, darker and deeper than any blitzball dome. "We go now," Riku said. "Storm's wrong. Sin's still close." "Sin?" Tidus flinched. "You really don't know?" He shook his head. She studied him again, as if trying to place his shape on a map she no longer trusted. Then she sighed, slinging her tool belt higher. "Then we'll start with the part that matters. If you see light below you, swim the other way." No explanation followed, just movement. The water closed over them like a gate. The tunnel narrowed to a throat of rusted lattice and jagged coral, pressurized silence surrounding them in slow compression. Every flick of their flippers stirred particulate ghosts, fragments of stone, of salt, of time. Tidus swam last, body aching, lungs sharp, vision blurred by the dim glow of Riku's flashlight ahead. She was the only point of certainty in the black, her path cutting a line through the unknown. His thoughts were not cohesive. Images surfaced and folded. Oren's hand, the broken stadium, a cheer collapsing mid-syllable. His mother's voice from memory, half song, half echo. "You were born in the sea." A tremor hit the current. Not noise, weight. Something moved outside the wall, too large for form, too slow for sound. The water responded, not with waves, but with dread. "Keep moving," Riku's voice crackled. "We're almost—" Then the current shattered. The wall to their left exploded inward, a blast of white-hot bubbles and stone dust scattering visibility. One salvager vanished in a streak of red. Riku screamed into the comm. Her light spiraled away. Tidus spun in zero-gravity panic, disoriented and alone. Then he saw it. Not Sin, an emissary, a Sin spawn. Scaled plates gleamed like oilskin, eyes like drowned lanterns. Its limbs coiled with impossible elasticity, propelling it toward him with silent violence. Instinct took over. He drew the dive knife clip to his belt, forgotten until now, and kicked hard toward the monster, striking it across what might have been a tendon. It reared back, hissing through gill frills. He had seconds. A second beam of light cut across the dark. Riku, back online. She lobbed a magnesium flare, detonating it in the water near the beast's face. Whiteout. Then recoil. "Run!" she yelled. They swam blind through the afterglow, lungs crying, muscles screaming. The tunnel tilted upward, a vertical shaft framed in broken pylons and fishbone reinforcements. Ascent. Light. They breached the surface in a cavern pool, coughing, gasping. The remaining Albed surfaced beside them, bruised but alive. The one who vanished didn't return. No one spoke of it. Tidus collapsed on the cavern stone. Riku yanked off her mask, wet blonde spikes plastered to her face. "You okay?" Tidus nodded weakly. "What was that?" Sin spawn, Shardborn. They follow after Sin like flies to rot. She looked away. Sometimes they come early. Warnings. He understood then what her face had meant when she said the storm was wrong. It wasn't weather. It was proximity. The others began packing, prepping gear. Riku turned back to Tidus, kneeling beside him. "Listen," she said. "I don't know where you're from, but you're here now. Spira doesn't care about pasts." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket, producing the spiral blitzball shell. It had survived the blast, the ocean, the void. He turned it in his fingers once, then let it fall into the pool. It sank slowly. No fanfare, no resistance. Gone. "I guess Spira doesn't care about futures either," he said. Riku said nothing, but she didn't look away. The sun returned slowly, not through sky, but through stone, thin fractured shafts of gold descending through the cavern's cracks like hesitant blessings. The light reached them in patches, bending across Riku's goggles, catching motes of dust that hovered like fireflies too tired to glow. Tidus sat apart from the salvagers now. Their voices murmured in Al-Bed, quick and precise, bouncing off rock like coded birdsong. They stripped gear, inventoried orbs, repaired what tech could still function. Life continued, like it had to. He watched the water, not for danger, for reflection, but the surface refused to mirror him. The man in the pool wore fatigue like a borrowed uniform, shoulders slouched, skin pale under temple grime. His hands looked like his father's, veined, calloused, steady from years of training. Except now, they trembled, barely. Riku approached with 2 heat packs wrapped in foil. She offered him one, no ceremony. "Eat," again. He obeyed, chewed slowly. It tasted like salt and glue, but it was warm. "Do you guys do this often?" he asked. "What? Save lost swimmers from other realities?" Riku arched a brow. "No first time." She didn't laugh this time. Neither did he. "What is this place?" he asked. "Spira?" She nodded. "You'll see more of it soon. Not all ruins. Some of it's even nice." "How far from Zanarkand?" Riku's pause answered, before her voice did. "Zanarkand. That place has been ruins for 1,000 years." The silence was not cinematic. No thunderclap, no music cue. Just absence, as if the air had briefly forgotten how to carry sound. Tidus looked down at his legs, unsure they'd hold if he tried to stand. "You're wrong. I was just there. Last night. I played in the Blitz final." Her face softened, not in doubt, but in grief. "You think you did?" That rewired something in his chest. Something small, something primal. Rage. "No," he said. "No, you don't get to." He stood, stumbled, caught himself on the cavern wall. "I was there. The lights, the crowd, the water. My father, he played there too. He disappeared 10 years ago, but he was..." Jecht? The word broke him like a dropped dish. He turned. "What did you say?" Riku stepped back, her voice cautious now. "Jecht. That was your father's name?" Tidus stared. "How do you know that name?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. His heartbeat wasn't normal. Not panic. Something older. Like his body remembered something his mind had never been taught. "You knew him?" he asked. "No," she said, "but the world does." A tremor rippled through the rock. Distant this time, like sin had passed, but left echoes behind. The salvagers began calling out. Time to move. Let's go, Riku said. Go where? Back to air. Back to surface. And maybe... She hesitated. Back to someone who might explain this better than me. Who? She only shrugged. Someone who's not just 16 with a toolkit. He followed, not because he trusted her, but because every other path had been broken. The tide laid them gently on the reef, like the sea was apologizing. Tidus came to on the shoreline, salt burning his nostrils, sun carving gold lines behind closed lids. The ocean here was not hostile, not like Zanarkand's dome-bound simulation. This was warmth and weight and movement, a thing older than memory. Each wave exhaled slowly, as if it had seen the end of the world and found no reason to rush. Voices filtered through the surf. Riku's team. But she was gone. He sat up, blinking. Besaid stretched before him. Verdant cliffs, wrapped in soft fog. A village nestled between jungle and lagoon, like someone had set it there gently, hoping it would grow. There were no sky rails, no mega screens, no noise but wind and bird song. It was not primitive, it was alive. He wandered forward, each step a test of balance. His body ached from pressure changes and panic. The heat didn't help, tropical, humid. The air smelled like woven palm and clean sweat. Then he heard it, a sound at once alien and intimate. The hymn of the faith, rising from the village temple, voices layered like carved stone. Tidus froze. It wasn't a recording. It moved, lifting and falling with breath, with grief, sung not by machines, but people who needed it to mean something. He walked toward it, drawn like sleepwalking. A narrow path led into the village. Children scattered across its stones, barefoot and unafraid. A blitzball rolled between them. Not a regulation sphere, just stitched fabric overstuffed, rolling lopsided. Still, it rolled. "Watch out," a boy called, laughing, and Tidus sidestepped as the ball nicked his shin. He caught it, held it. The texture was wrong, the weight off, but in his hands it sparked something he hadn't felt since Zanarkand. Reflex. "You play?" the boy asked. Tidus smiled despite himself. "Yeah, you could say that." Before the boy could ask more, a deeper voice cut through. "Hey, you're not from around here." A young man approached, broad-shouldered and sun-scorched, a lazy swagger, masked military grace. A tattoo curled around his left arm, a prayer spiral, half faded. His eyes flicked from Tidus's shoes to his soaked jacket, to the blitzball. "I'm Waka," he said. "You one of the Albed?" "No," Tidus replied, then hesitated. "I don't think so." Waka raised an eyebrow. "You don't think so? It's complicated." A silence stretched. Then Waka clapped a hand on his shoulder. Spira's full of complicated. Come on, you're probably hungry." Tidus followed him through the village, where women hung linens on curved driftwood racks, the cloths flapping like sails. Wind tugged at everything, prayer flags, banners, hair. Even the silence had a current. A dog barked. Somewhere a fire crackled. The hymn never stopped. As they passed the temple, Tidus stopped. A statue of High Summoner O'Halland stood at its base, worn by time, flowers at his feet. Tidus stared at the inscription, the name. Something stirred. My father knew that name. Waka turned, surprised. You're Jecht's kid? Tidus's stomach flipped. You knew him. Waka's expression shifted, nostalgia tightening into something darker. Knew of him. He played for the Aurochs in the old vids, then disappeared. Yuna's dad, Lord Braska, he went with him, saved the world. The wind paused. Tidus didn't. He's dead then? Long time now. A pause. Come, Waka said. Yuna'll want to meet you. The village of Besaid smelled like spun cotton, open fruit, and sandalwood smoke. It was not the future. It had no skyline, but it lived, in the way things do when they aren't afraid of being forgotten. The buildings curved with the wind, their thatch roofs woven tighter than any dome could seal, and laughter carried farther than radio signals ever would. Waka led him past the town square to a cluster of huts painted in ochre and palm dye hues. Rest here. The Crusaders got spare gear, and Lulu can probably magic your shoes dry. Crusaders? Tidus asked. Waka turned back. Defenders of Spira, not monks, not Yevon's hand, just people who fight sin the best they can. Tidus nodded, though the word sin still struck like thunder behind glass. Inside the hut, a woman stirred tea over a low emberstone fire. She was tall, angular, wrapped in deep violet robes lined with belts and beads. Her eyes were lined not by age, but precision. "This him?" she asked. "Yep, washed up on the reef. Didn't even know what a chocobo was." Waka smirked. Tidus frowned. "What's a—" "Exactly," Waka said. Lulu's gaze didn't soften. She handed Tidus a ceramic cup. It steamed with bitterroot and orange peel. "Drink. If you're lying, we'll find out. If not, welcome." He drank. It tasted like dirt and citrus, but it steadied something in him. "So," Lulu said, folding her arms, "you're from Zanarkand?" Tidus hesitated. "Yes. Last night I was playing Blitz at the stadium. 10 seconds later I was drowning." Waka winced. "Man, you don't know." "Know what?" "Zanarkand's been ruins for 1,000 years, Lulu said flatly. Jecht, Braska, and Auron went there at the end of their pilgrimage. No one comes from there. But "You believe it," she interrupted, "which means it's either trauma or something worse." Worse? Magic. Time. Faith's dream. Take your pick. Tidus gripped the mug tighter. He didn't want to argue. He wanted answers. Waka placed a hand on his shoulder again. "Look, maybe the temple'll help. You believe in Yevon?" "I don't know what that is." Lulu snorted. "Then you're going to love the temple." They took him there at sunset. The temple was old stone and newer scaffolding, maintained by hands that knew reverence and ropework equally well. A bell rang once, low and solemn. The villagers gathered outside, their forms casting long shadows over the moss-cracked stone. No one spoke. The hymn rose again, this time not in echo, but in full. Children held woven shells like the one Tidus had lost. One pressed hers to his chest. "It keeps sin away," she whispered. He held it, barely breathing. Up the stairs, a girl stepped out. She wore the robes of a summoner, sleeves wide like wings, staff gripped in steady fingers. Her hair glinted like copper. Her eyes didn't blink when they met his. "Tidus," Waka said, "this is Yuna." She bowed slightly, then smiled. "I heard you came from Zanarkand," she said. "That's incredible." And just like that, something gentled in the air. Not belief, not yet, but permission to belong. Yuna led Tidus down a worn path toward the lagoon, barefoot and unhurried. The dusk caught her robes in trailing gold, casting their shadows long across the moss-dappled stones. She asked no questions at first, just walked beside him as the wind pushed salt and prayer through the air. The cliffs rose on either side, their faces carved with glyphs too old for translation. Tide pools pulsed with tiny fish, glowing faintly in the dimming light. The hymn was distant now, like a memory replayed through walls. Still, it lingered. Finally, Yuna spoke. "You're really Jecht's son?" "I think so," Tidus replied. "He disappeared 10 years ago. Everyone said he drowned." Her face shifted, grief and awe crossing it like birds in storm. "My father knew him. They journeyed together, before the calm." Everyone keeps saying that. Calm. What is it? She turned toward the water. When a summoner defeats sin, peace returns, for a time. That's the calm. And then sin comes back? She nodded. Then what's the point? The wind took that question and stretched it thin. Yuna didn't answer, not right away. "There's always a point," she said softly, "even if it only lasts a little while." They reached the beach. Children were still there, lining small shells with bits of blue pigment. One boy held his to the sky like an offering. "They think it protects them," Yuna said. "Blitzball-shaped shells, their version of courage." Tidus knelt beside a boy who smiled wide. "Can I have one?" The child nodded solemnly. Choosing a green shell streaked with white, he placed it in Tidus's hand like a relic. "For you, so sin won't eat you." Tidus blinked. "Thanks, I'll hold on to it." He looked at Yuna. "What's your role in all this?" "I'm training to defeat sin. I'm almost ready." You're what, 17? 17 next month. That's insane. It's tradition." He stared at her. "Do you want to?" Yuna didn't flinch. "It's not about want. It's what I was born for." The wind died down. The sea went still. The world held its breath between tides. Then she smiled again, gentle, genuine. "But today, I wanted to come to the beach." She sat beside him on the sand, letting her toes dig in. A long silence settled between them, comfortable in its honesty. Tidus turned the green shell in his palm. "What happens if you win?" "I die." He looked up, startled. She didn't. "It's part of the final summoning. The summoner gives their life." He gripped the shell tighter. "That's tradition, too?" She nodded. "That's a stupid tradition." She laughed, soft and sudden. It echoed down the beach like light through stained glass. "Maybe," she said, "but I'd like to make my own decisions before then." That night, The villagers lit small fires across the temple courtyard. Not for warmth, it was never cold here, but for the way fire made stories feel more permanent. Tidus sat between Waka and Lulu as Yuna performed a ritual. Arms curved through practiced motions, staff rising in arcs that mimicked tides. Her silhouette moved against the fire like it belonged to something older. "She sends the dead," Waka whispered. "So they don't become fiends." Tidus squinted. Fiends? When people die with regret, they don't rest. They turn into monsters. He stared at the flames, uneasy. "You really believe that?" Waka didn't answer. He didn't have to. A pair of children walked by, singing a slow, almost whispered version of the hymn. Tidus watched them carry a blitzball-shaped shell toward the temple steps and nestle it between prayer candles. "People here live inside stories," he said. "Everything means something." Lulu's voice came low, sharp. "And what about you? What did everything mean in Zanarkand?" Tidus hesitated. The next game, the next win, the next paycheck. That's all. Lulu regarded him without blinking. "Then maybe you're lucky. You have the chance to choose a better story." The fire popped. Somewhere a bell chimed once. Yuna approached. Her robe shimmered from ash sparks, her face radiant with effort and sweat. She looked tired, but more present than anyone Tidus had ever known. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "That was for 2 villagers lost at sea last moon. We never found the bodies. This is the best we can do." Tidus swallowed. "That's heavy." "It's Spira," she said. "Always heavy. But we carry each other." Later, as the stars claimed the sky and the fires dimmed to embers, Waka took Tidus aside. "We're leaving tomorrow. Yuna's ready." "For what?" "The pilgrimage. Every summoner walks the land, gathers power at temples, and faces trials. Until the end." "And you just follow?" She asked. "That's enough." Tidus paced. "And what? You just let her die at the end?" Waka's jaw tightened. "We protect her until she saves us. That's the job." Tidus looked at the horizon. He couldn't see the sea anymore, but he felt it, pulling at something inside him. "I'm coming too." Waka blinked. "You serious?" "She knows my father, and if what you say is true, then maybe I can help." Silence stretched. Waka clapped him on the shoulder. "You're crazy, man, but okay." Inside the temple, Yuna placed a new shell on her windowsill, a green one, streaked with white. The lullaby of the hymn drifted through the walls, and this time, when Tidus heard it, it didn't sound like a stranger's melody. It sounded like a promise. The ferry creaked like an old throat, ferrying Spira's most prized distraction toward its proudest stage. Luca bloomed on the horizon, a sprawl of spires and walkways straddling twin harbors. Its architecture gleamed from 1,000 tournament posters, all angles meant to echo grandeur. Yevon's jewel, the city's designers called it. But from the deck, Tidus felt only the weight of memory, clawing at recognition. He leaned against the rail as sea spray kissed his face. The ocean here tasted less wild than Barge, but no less unknowable. Below, Fish flickered like sparks in the water's fold. Waka stood beside him, humming under his breath, tuning his arm for the Aurochs' first match in years. "You ever play in a stadium like this?" Waka asked. Tidus smirked. "Every week. Mine was louder." "Then today'll be just like home, yeah?" Tidus didn't reply. The line between then and now blurred too easily here. The docks exploded into life as they docked, trumpets blaring, banners whipping overhead, announcers chanting team rosters in every major dialect. Luca was spectacle incarnate, a city curated for performance. Everything gleamed, even the guards. "Stay close," Lulu warned, adjusting her staff as they disembarked. Crowds like this are loud enough to cover anything, including blades. But it was Tidus they surrounded. Fans, mostly kids, swarmed him, calling Jecht's name like it still mattered. They didn't know him, not really, just his legacy, preserved in vintage spheres, and whispered regret. Yuna smiled through it all, a quiet anchor amidst the noise. Her guardians flanked her with the vigilance of myth. Then the screens lit up. Above the city square, jumbotrons displayed the opening ceremony. The announcer's voice boomed through enchanted speakers. Luca welcomes summoners and warriors alike, for peace, for glory, for the calm. Tidus watched the feed flip to a massive gate opening. From its archway emerged Maester Seymour. The crowd hushed, then roared. Tidus's heart didn't. Seymour's presence was oil poured slow, measured, deliberate, too still to be natural. His eyes glowed with something more than ceremony. When he turned toward the camera, it felt personal. "Let us celebrate life through blitz," Seymour said, "and let those who carry death remember that even sin must pause for pageantry." Tidus felt a chill crawl his spine. Oren, silent until now, leaned in. "That's him." "Who?" "Yevon's smiling executioner. Watch his hands. He never gestures without reason." As if summoned by script, Seymour's fingers unfurled in a sign unfamiliar to Tidus, part prayer, part threat. The air buzzed, static under fanfare. And deep within the harbour mist, something stirred that did not belong to the celebration. The stadium pulsed with the rhythm of 1,000 feet, its foundation vibrating with anticipation and applause. The crowd became its own weather system. Hot breath, sharp cheers, fluttering streamers like wind. Tidus stood in the locker tunnel, arms crossed, visor down, as the Luca goers strutted past in perfectly matched arrogance. "This is it," Waka said behind him. "Win, and the Aurochs break a 23-year curse." Tidus smirked. "And lose?" "Same curse, longer shadow." They stepped into light. The crowd's volume quadrupled. Fireworks hissed skyward in plumes of blue and gold. Drones hovered overhead, capturing every angle. The dome filled with water, thick and pressurized, shaped by Pyrefield generators, turning the arena into an airless globe of spectacle. Tidus dove in first. For a heartbeat, all was silent. Water swallowed the world. His limbs remembered before he did. Twist, spin, glide. Here he was king again. Motion became language. They played. The goers were ruthless. Precision passes, dirty fouls masked by charm. Tidus weaved through them with muscle memory, scoring once, then twice. The Aurochs surged in belief. Waka held the goal like a cliff, against tide. For a moment, everything shimmered like Zanarkand again. Then the glass trembled. Not metaphor, not nerves. The dome shook. The crowd murmured. A low rumble threaded through the foundation. Lights flickered. On the jumbotron, the feed glitched, then corrected, then screamed. A wall of ocean rose behind the bay gates. Sin. It didn't attack. Not yet. But the implication was enough. The pageant cracked. Screams broke rhythm. Guards surged into motion. The blitzball sphere hovered mid-air, forgotten. Tidus surfaced inside the dome, saw the crowd ripple with panic. A child dropped a souvenir shell. It cracked on stone. Waka shouted, "Get the summoner out!" Yuna. Somewhere in this chaos. Tidus didn't hesitate. He vaulted out of the pool, still soaked, vision narrow. He followed the panic upstream, past the ticket booths, up the promenade, through a sea of terrified pilgrims. Then he saw her. Yuna, cornered near the prayer alcove. A group of hooded figures pressed close, not random looters, organized, too calm. Al-Baid. Tidus charged. "Hey!" One turned, masked, mechanical voice. "She's needed." "For what?" Before an answer could be given, Waka tackled one from behind. Lulu unleashed a spell. Light cracked through shadow, scattering them. Tidus reached Yuna. "You okay?" She nodded, wide-eyed, clinging to her staff. "They said they wouldn't hurt me." "Yeah?" Didn't sound convincing. The attackers scattered. The crowd thickened. But Sin did not descend. It waited. Far above, Seymour watched from a private balcony, unmoved. Tidus met his gaze, and for the briefest second, the maester smiled. The panic subsided with disturbing efficiency. Luca's security detail swept through the promenade like floodwater through alleys, ordered, impersonal. Vendors resumed hawking wares with shaky voices. The blitzball final resumed on delay. The scoreboard reset, as if erasing fear could rewrite memory. But something had changed in the air. Not broken, but bent. Tidus stood at the railing of the main concourse, staring out toward the bay. Sin had vanished. It came and went, without destruction, without purpose, seemingly. Just a presence. Yuna approached quietly. She stood beside him, saying nothing for a long time. "They think it was a warning," she finally whispered. Tidus didn't respond. She continued, softer still, that Sin was watching the game. "That's insane. Spira is insane." Waka found them moments later, bruised but beaming. "We made the finals anyway," he said. "They're rescheduling for tomorrow. Gotta show the people some hope." "Even if it's fake?" Tidus asked. Waka paused. "Hope's still hope, yeah?" Tidus didn't argue. Oren joined them last, his coat still damp, sword sheathed, eyes fixed on the sea. "It was him," he said. "Who?" "Jecht." The word hit Tidus like cold metal in the spine. "You're saying my father is Sin?" "Yes." No flourish, no sympathy, just truth. Yuna looked between them, confused. "But how?" Oren turned. "We don't have time for the whole story. But know this, Jecht didn't die. He changed, became bound to Spira's nightmare. Tidus stepped back. No, that's not. He couldn't. He hated this place. He wouldn't become it. Then ask yourself why sin didn't destroy Luca today, Auron said. Why it lingered. Tidus's breath caught. Not grief, not yet. Paradox. He wanted to scream. Instead, he stared down at his fists, trembling. Later that evening, the Guardians reconvened in a quiet corridor of the stadium. Meister Seymour requested an audience. They met him in a private suite, flanked by guards and velvet. He stood near a balcony, sipping something translucent and expensive. His smile was all theatre. Lady Yuna, Guardians, you have my deepest regrets for the incident. Save them, Lulu said, arms crossed. You were watching. You did nothing. Would you have me battle sin alone? He replied, hand to chest. Symbolism only goes so far. His gaze slid to Tidus. And you, the son of Jecht. Curious. Tidus stiffened. Seymour stepped forward, hands folded like a scholar. You've inherited more than his name. I wonder, will you inherit his fate? Tidus didn't reply, but Auron did. Careful, Maester. You play too close to the fire. Seymour's smile widened. I merely observe, as all good priests do. As they turned to leave, he added, Spira needs a new calm, perhaps new methods. That night, Tidus stood alone outside the inn, listening to the hymn echo from somewhere deep within the city's bricks. Not sung this time, but hummed, software tired. He didn't hum back. Morning came without clarity. The skies over Luca had returned to their engineered blue, and clean-up crews had already polished away last night's fear. But for Tidus, the city's gleam only amplified the hollowness beneath. Sin hadn't attacked. Jecht hadn't died. The stage had cracked, and no one had admitted the fracture was real. He sat on the stadium steps, arms draped over his knees, watching as pilgrims passed by, pretending not to be afraid. Auron joined him. No greeting. Tidus finally asked, How long? Auron didn't look at him. Since before you were born. So he was always meant to be this? No, he chose. That made it worse. Waka approached from the far tunnel, holding the blitzball under one arm. Game still on. Seymour's idea. Gotta show the world we're not afraid. I am afraid, Tidus said. Waka smiled. Good means you're paying attention. They walked together to the prep area, where Yuna was waiting. She looked different today. Not tired, sharpened, like grief had carved focus. I heard what Auron said, she said softly. Tidus hesitated. And? She took his hand. Not affection, contact. Then we save him. What? We defeat sin. We free your father. But if he is sin, she shook her head. Then all the more reason. He stared at her. The sun framed her hair like a halo, and for one impossible moment, he believed her. The crowd roared again as the final began. Tidus re-entered the dome. This time the game wasn't just spectacle. It was defiance. The Aurochs played like the world watched for salvation. Tidus scored once, twice. The third goal bent physics, a spiral so tight it made the dome ripple. The crowd screamed. For a moment, Zanarkand flickered behind his eyes, not in memory, in power. They won. After, reporters swarmed. Tidus was dragged into lights, microphones, floating drones. Hero of the calm. The Jecht legacy continues. What do you say to Spira? He blinked, then said, I'm not my father. Cut to silence. The rest of the day blurred in cheers and palm wine. But late at night, Tidus walked alone to the harbour, where sin had once risen. He dropped the green and white blitzball shell Yuna gave him into the tide. It floated, then turned once, then sank. Somewhere in the deep, something noticed. The calm lands stretched before them like a wound too vast to close. Wind swept across cracked red soil, carrying the scent of dust and forgotten prayers. Once, armies had clashed here against sin. Now, only banners remained, tattered symbols of faith, fluttering like defeated spirits tethered to the bones of monuments. Tidus walked beside Yuna. Neither spoke. There was no audience here. No blitzball dome. Just horizon. They passed a column carved with the names of fallen summoners. Waka slowed, as he read each one aloud under his breath. Lulu said nothing, her fingers trailing one stone name, as if weighing its memory. Tidus stopped beside a pile of prayer beads, ground into the earth, crushed by time or pilgrimage. He bent, picked one up. The string snapped at his touch. You okay? Yuna asked. He didn't answer right away. This place doesn't want to be remembered. Yuna nodded. It remembers itself. They camped near a rock formation, shaped by ancient Aeon's heat. The Guardians took watch rotations. Yuna prayed alone. Tidus stood on a ridge above the camp, trying to find patterns in the stars. Auron joined him. This is where paths change. I thought they already had. Not enough. Below, the flames flickered. Auron continued, voice low. Yuna's made her choice. She won't stop. But the temples have chosen something darker. What does that mean? Tomorrow you'll see. Tidus tried to sleep, but his mind unraveled the silence, memory blending with prophecy. The calm lands were too still. Not peace, restraint. At dawn, they entered the Bevel Pass, stone bridges winding above chasms that glowed faintly with firefly mist. Temple banners lined the trail. Soldiers waited. The High Bridge. Seymour waited at its center, flanked by monks and armored priests. His robes shimmered. His expression was joy carved in ice. Yuna's steps slowed. Waka hissed, That's not possible. We left him. Unsent, Auron cut in. He's no longer living, but not gone. Tidus stepped forward. What do you want? Seymour smiled. Only to honor tradition. The summoner must marry the Meister, a sacred union. Yuna's face cracked. Not fear, but revulsion. You murdered your father, she said. Seymour inclined his head. And now I offer Spira unity in return. He raised his hand. Aeons answered. Ice form from nothing, shards spinning into Shiva's form, her beauty terrible. Guards unsheathed weapons. Waka readied his ball. Lulu's hands sparked. Tidus stepped between them and Yuna. Seymour's eyes narrowed. You would stand between faith and peace. Tidus looked at Yuna. You're not doing this. Yuna's hands trembled on her staff, but she nodded. I'm not. Then the sky fractured. The air cracked with magic. Shiva descended in spirals of frost, her gaze untouched by mortal fear. Around her, priests drew weapons, not to fight, but to enforce. Seymour extended a hand toward Yuna. I offer permanence. You offer only death. Yuna stepped back. Tidus moved without thinking. Steel rang out. Auron's blade intercepting a monk's advance. Sparks skittering across the bridge. Lulu shouted an incantation. Flame curling through the frost-choked air. Waka blocked a strike meant for Yuna with his shoulder, grunting as he shoved back. Run, Auron barked. They didn't run. They charged. Shiva exhaled. The world froze at the edges. Ice crawling across the stone, slowing limbs, biting air. Tidus gritted his teeth and dove for Yuna, pulling her down as a spear of crystal shot over their heads. The bridge groaned beneath the collision. Yuna, he gasped. Can you send her? No, she shouted. She's too strong here. This is Bevel's ground. Lulu's magic flared, ice against fire, cancelling itself in bursts of vapor. Auron fought with precise brutality, each swing opening a path toward the exit. The enemy didn't fight to kill. They fought to contain. This is a show, Lulu snarled. They want us to look like heretics on their stage. Waka staggered beside her. Good. Let's give them a show. Tidus pulled Yuna up. I won't let him take you. Her eyes met his, wide with something beyond fear. Resolve. I'm not letting him either. They pushed forward. Shiva floated above, casting slow judgment, her strikes now restrained, ceremonial. Yuna raised her staff. I refuse. Seymour's expression cracked, just for a breath. Then it returned. So be it. He vanished in a storm of glyphs. The guards didn't retreat. More arrived. Auron called. Jump! What? Now! The guardians leapt over the side of the bridge, into the chasm below. Magic softened the fall. Yuna summoned water in a spiral, guiding their descent into an ancient aqueduct laced with moss and old stone. They hit hard, but they lived. Water soaked them. The tunnel ahead glowed faintly, an old escape route. Forgotten, discarded. They followed it. Hours passed. The glow dimmed. Light returned. They emerged beyond Bevel, wet, bruised, condemned. Yuna turned to them, breath heavy. I've broken faith. Tidus stepped beside her. No, you found it. She looked at him. Her lips parted, but the words failed. Instead, she walked forward, and the pilgrimage continued, not with Yevon's blessing, but with her own. The calm lands were no longer behind them, but the fractures they left echoed louder than any battle. News of their escape moved faster than the wind. At every inn, whispers greeted them, heretics, betrayers of Yevon. Summoner turned rogue. Yuna said nothing. She walked at the front now, chin high, steps deliberate. Each village they passed stared longer, bowed less. Tidus kept close, not to protect, to witness. At night they camped near Lake Macalania, The trees there were carved from frost glass, their branches humming with a tune only aeons heard. The water was still, no wind, no fish, no sin, only reflection. Tidus sat beside Yuna near the edge. "Are you okay?" "No," she said, "but I'm clear." She removed her boots, dipped her feet into the ice-lit lake. He hesitated, then did the same. The cold stole his breath. "Why here?" She smiled faintly. "This is where my father made his last vow, before Zanarkand." "What did he promise?" "To keep walking, even when there was no path left." Tidus watched her in silence. Then, "Yuna, if you finish this, if you summon the Final Aeon, I die. I know. I just—" She turned to him. Her face broke, not in tears, but release. "I don't want to." He reached for her hand. "You won't." They kissed. Not because it was scripted, because there were no more walls between them. The lake rippled. Fireflies rose around them like falling stars in reverse. The hymn returned. Not from temple, not from lips, but from the land itself. Resonant, rooted. When they returned to camp, no one spoke of what had changed. But they all felt it. They were no longer guardians of a ritual. They were warriors in rebellion. They marched on under no banner. No priest blessed their steps. No crowd waited in reverence. The guardians walked with only silence behind them and hunted truths ahead. Tidus moved beside Yuna, watching her braid her hair tighter each morning, as though each loop was armor forged from defiance. They passed through small settlements, each one quieter than the last. At a riverside village, they found the temple abandoned, statues of Yevon half toppled, prayer scrolls soaked by rain. No monks, just a child at the gate. He offered Yuna a sphere, cracked, with a faint sigil on its core. "For luck," he said, "in case the gods forget you." Yuna took it without blinking. "Thank you." Tidus knelt beside the boy. "Why aren't you inside?" The boy shrugged. "They said no one's listening anymore." The group moved on. Oren spoke only once that day. When gods go silent, people fill the silence with screams. By dusk, they reached a rise overlooking a ruined encampment. Smoke still curled from the wreckage. Crusader tents, torn and trampled. Tidus descended first, stepping over shattered armor and burnt prayer rings. "Sin?" he asked. "No," Lulu said grimly. "People." Riku found a journal beneath a broken crate, scorched but legible. They tried to defend a caravan, but Bevel declared them traitors. The guards turned on them mid-battle. Tidus looked away. The sun dipped lower, and the horizon turned blood-washed amber. Yuna held the cracked sigil sphere close to her chest. "They trusted in faith," she said softly, "and faith devoured them." Tidus stepped beside her, quiet. "Not this time," he said. "Not you." She didn't cry, but when she looked up, her eyes were no longer asking questions. They were preparing answers. The wind at Gagazet was not born of weather. It came from deeper places, echoes through stone, breath of aeons half awake. Snow spun upward in sheets, dancing like ash in reverse. Tidus pulled his cloak tighter, though no fabric could insulate against the truth beginning to frost inside him. They had climbed for hours. The temple at the mountain's base was long behind them, and the silence of the Ronso monks lingered like a warning carved in ritual. "Pilgrims don't usually come this far," Waka muttered, trudging ahead. "Summoners do," Yuna said, her voice calm, resolute. The trail narrowed between cliff spires. Firefly veins pulsed underfoot, thin, luminous cracks threading the ice like ley lines beneath a mirror. Each step creaked with memory. At the summit ridge, Auron halted. "Here," he said. "This is where the Faith watch." Tidus scanned the horizon. Nothing moved but the light. Then, a sound. Not voice, not music, pressure. The ground vibrated with the rhythm of deep-breathed dreaming. A temple door, framed in stone and etched in a language Tidus couldn't read, opened without touch. The guardians entered. Inside, darkness. Then color. A chamber shaped like a heart carved in ice. Statues lined the walls, frozen in motion. Each was a child, each face different, each expression the same, waiting. Yuna stepped to the center. Her staff glowed faintly. Tidus followed. But before he reached her, the chamber blinked. Not his eyes. The world shifted. The statues turned, and one of them opened its eyes. The child stepped down from the pedestal without sound. Not footsteps, not breath, only presence. Tidus staggered back, heart slamming against ribs. Yuna held her staff upright, unmoving. The others remained still, watching, as if some ancient rule bound them to silence. "You're not supposed to be here yet," the child said. His voice echoed like stone scraped in memory. What?" Tidus asked. "You were supposed to end, but you kept going." Tidus's pulse roared. "Who are you?" The child tilted his head. "I am the dream, and the dreamer." Tidus shook his head. "That doesn't make sense." "It does. It will." Around them, the other statues glowed faintly. The faith was stirring. "You're saying you made me?" The child walked closer. Not made, remembered, over and over, a city that never ended, a father who always vanished, a son who always swam faster. Tidus backed away. "You're lying." "No," the child said. "You are." The chamber flickered. Tidus's breath caught. The walls bent, revealing flashes of Zanarkand, neon towers, blitz cheers, Jecht's last game. "Why?" Tidus whispered. "Why me?" The child sat, cross-legged, unblinking. "Because your story wouldn't let go. You refused to fade. And now," he looked up, "now you must." Tidus clenched his fists. "I'm real." "You're real here, but you weren't born. You were held. The faith dream you. And when the dream ends, I disappear." The silence that followed wasn't cruel. It was inevitable. Yuna stepped forward, eyes wide. "Tidus." He turned to her. "I'm not from Zanarkand." "You are," she said. "Just not ours." He looked down. "I'm a memory someone keeps reliving." The child nodded. "And memories don't last." The air thickened, not with cold, but with recognition. Yuna stepped toward the faith child, her staff lowered, eyes wide, but calm. If Tidus is a dream, then why bring him here? Why now? The faith looked at her, not as a god, but as a peer. Because his part must end, or all of this continues. Tidus turned sharply. What does that mean? The child raised his hand, and the room shifted again. This time, not images, memories shared across the chamber. Sin, you Yevon, aeons devoured and recycled, a spiral of sacrifice, the faith chanting endlessly in their slumber, powering illusions and summoners alike. Cities crumbling, rebuilt in memory, crumbling again. We give dreams to sustain your world, but dreams are cages. Yuna closed her eyes. You're trapped. The child nodded once. And you are the key. Tidus stared at the image of his own face, suspended in a shimmering veil. My death ends this. Not death, release dot, but I'll be gone. Yes. Silence pressed inward, heavy, unforgiving. Then Oren stepped forward. He has the right to choose. The faith blinked. Choice. A mortal invention. Tidus laughed bitterly. Then I choose. Yuna reached for him. Wait. He stopped. I didn't bring you here to disappear, she said, voice cracking. I brought you here to live. The faith responded, quieter now. Then change the world. End the cycle. Break the god who feeds on us. You, Yevon. The name landed like ice water in flame. Where is he? Tidus asked. Everywhere sin is. Every time an aeon dies, he hides in what you believe. Tidus turned to the others. We have to stop summoning. End the Final Aeon. End him. Lulu's voice was quiet, certain. Then Spira will finally wake. Outside the wind howled. A storm not of snow, but purpose. They descended Gagazet not in retreat, but with purpose carved into every step. The wind still howled behind them, but it no longer chilled. It hummed, like the breath of something waking from centuries of song. Fireflies drifted through the air, silent witnesses to a pilgrimage transformed. Tidus walked ahead now, the faith's final words a compass in his chest. No more Final Aeon, no more death for calm, no more dreaming. They would not offer Yuna's life to end sin. They would destroy you, Yevon, instead. Waka caught up to him on a narrow ledge. You sure about this, man? No, Tidus said, but I'm done being part of someone else's loop. Waka nodded. That's good enough. Below them, Zanarkand shimmered on the horizon. Not the city Tidus remembered, but the ruins of it. What had once been neon and thunder was now broken glass beneath starlight. Yuna slowed. This was the end of every pilgrimage. Lulu joined her. Now it's the beginning. They passed through shattered arches, stone walkways torn by time, and battles no longer named. At the center, an old chamber hummed with static energy, the final temple, the place where summoners would pray for their final aeon. Yuna stepped inside, alone. Tidus followed after a beat. The room pulsed, not with life, but with anticipation. Ghosts of summoners past lingered in statues and echoes. A high altar still stood, its glyphs flickering faintly, waiting for her. She didn't kneel. Instead, she placed the cracked sigil sphere from the child at Bevel at the altar's base. I don't offer death, she whispered. I demand release. Nothing happened. Then the glyphs flared once and went dark. A shift. The room opened, not physically, but spiritually. An acceptance. When Yuna turned, she didn't speak. She led. Outside, the guardians waited. Tidus met her eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I will be." They turned toward the final battle. Not a ritual, not a rite, a rebellion. They approached sin, not with desperation, but design. The waters near the ruins shimmered with dread. No city, no wall, no congregation waited here. Only the ocean, black, still, infinite. It had returned to its source, floating silent beyond reach, as if daring them to challenge eternity itself. Tidus stared at it, standing atop the ship's bow. The wind pulled at his hair, but he didn't flinch. This was the shape of his father now, and soon it would be the shape of his ending. Behind him, the guardians readied. No speeches, no rites, just readiness. Yuna came to stand beside him. "You don't have to." "I do," he said. "But you know what it means." "I do." The ship creaked forward. Lightning split the clouds far ahead. Sin's breath, turning weather into omen. Fireflies hovered in unnatural patterns, as if pulled by unseen tides. "Let's go," Tidus said. The air shimmered. Sin's massive shell broke the surface, miles wide, covered in scars from past battles and firefly burns. It didn't roar. It simply was, a monolith of the old world's persistence. Tidus leapt first. The others followed. Landing wasn't soft, but it was sure. The outer armor of Sin was a cathedral of agony, veins of light, bone-carved paths, memories etched into walls of calcified faith. Tidus felt it all pulse beneath his boots. "This is where Jecht waits," Oren said, "and where he ends." They advanced inward. Every step forward peeled away illusions. Summoners' ghosts blinked from alcoves. Their aeons screamed silently, frozen in defeat. Statues of Yevon cracked and crumbled without touch. And in the distance, a shape waited. Jecht. Still human in outline, still father in memory, but warped, his skin flickering with Aeon residue, his voice no longer his own. "You came?" he said. Tidus nodded. "To set you free." Jecht stood at the heart of Sin, no longer man, not yet monster. His body shimmered with Aeon residue, pieces of him breaking apart and reassembling, as if memory and mass were negotiating his shape in real time. Eyes once sharp, now burned with borrowed light. But when he looked at Tidus, something human blinked through. "You grew up," Jecht said. Tidus stepped forward. "You faded." Jecht chuckled, rough, rusted. "Guess we both changed." Silence sat between them, not heavy, final. Oren moved behind them, hand on blade. "He's ready." Jecht didn't deny it. "I can hold it off," he said, nodding toward the core behind him. Yevon's chamber, pulsating like a parasitic womb. But not for long. Tidus stepped closer. "Why didn't you fight it before?" "Because I hoped someone else would find another way." Yuna reached the platform, gaze fixed on Yevon's shell. visible now through walls of pulsing light, like a child curled in power and denial. Lulu whispered, "That's no god." "No," Jecht said, "just habit-given form." The guardians surrounded him. Tidus met his father's gaze one last time. "Let's finish it." Jecht smiled, not proud, not mocking, just ready. He roared. The shell shattered. Energy tore the chamber open. The battle began. Aeons called, first Bahamut, then Shiva, then Ifrit, each one torn from memory and power, each one consumed by Yevon's tethering grasp. Yuna screamed, "He's using them! Every summoner's bond, every Aeon!" "We have to free them," Tidus shouted. "Let them end." They fought. Each Aeon fell, not slain, but released. One by one, their souls scattered like golden embers across the chamber. The air burned with unmaking. Finally, Yevon pulsed alone. Small, pathetic, a whimpering loop of instinct and fear, crawling toward another host. Tidus stepped forward. "No more dreams." And he struck. Yevon writhed beneath the blade, not screaming, not pleading, just repeating, a pulse, a tether, a cycle gasping for another start. But there were no Aeons left, no summoner to host him. The bonds had been cut, not in hate, but in mercy. The chamber collapsed inward, not with ruin, but release. Fireflies soared upward like birds learning the sky for the first time. Sin's body trembled. Tidus stepped back from the core, the light already beginning to pass through him. Yuna ran to him, grasping his arm. Her fingers met resistance, then less. "No," she whispered. "It's okay," Tidus said, voice steady, even as his edges blurred. "I was always a part of this. The dream. It has to end. You don't have to fade. I was never meant to stay." Behind them, the guardians watched in silence. No spell, no sword to stop the truth. Tidus turned to each of them. To Lulu, he nodded. "You gave her strength." To Waka, "You made me believe people could change." To Riku, "You reminded me to laugh." To Auron, whose form was already unraveling, "Thank you for carrying me." Auron gave a single nod, then stepped into the light. His duty fulfilled, his chains dissolved. Tidus faced Yuna last. "You changed the world." "No," she said, choking the word. "We did." He touched her face, just once. His hand passed through, warm and dissolving. Then he smiled. "I love you." She reached for him, but the light took him, and then he jumped, off Sin's body, into air, into sky, into silence. The shell cracked. The sea swallowed Sin whole. For the first time in memory, Spira held no monster, only the sound of the wind. Spira held its breath. The last of Sin dissolved into the ocean, its remnants vanishing like mist before dawn. The silence left behind wasn't empty. It rang like a bell in the bones of every soul that had ever feared the deep. And then, cheering. From Besaid to Bevel, voices rose, not in ritual, not in rote, in relief, in hope. High on the cliffs above the sea, Yuna stood before a gathering of villagers, crusaders, Ronso, Albed, even temple defectors. No priest crowned her. No hymn preceded her steps. She raised her arm and swept it downward. Silence. "I will not ask you to pray," she said, her voice carrying. "I will not ask you to believe in gods that kept us chained. I ask only this: believe in each other." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Then hands touched shoulders, eyes lifted. Children peeked from behind parents. Waka stood at the edge of the field, cradling a newborn in his arms, the sunlight bright on the boy's brow. "No more sin," he whispered. "No more hiding." Down the hill, Riku taught village kids how to spin blitzballs, not as weapons of escape, but as games again. Laughter returned like muscle memory. Lulu burned her last prayer beads, watched them turn to ash in her palm. She smiled. Above them all, the far plain shimmered faintly, not calling, just present. Yuna turned toward it. She stepped to the water's edge. For a moment, the sea stilled. A ripple formed, circular, quiet. And there, just beneath the surface, a hand. Tidus's. Fingers brushed hers in the wind. Not corporeal, not lost, just possible. The hymn rose, not from temples, from Spira itself. Not an end, a beginning. The waters calmed. Where once waves crashed to mark sin's presence, now tide pools held only fish and sun glint. No fireflies lingered, no shadow loomed, just the gentle, rhythmless hush of an ocean relearning itself. On Besaid's beach, children chased blitzballs without glancing over their shoulders. The game had become joy again, not defiance. Yuna stood at the island's crest. No robes, no staff, just the wind combing her hair. Her voice, when it came, was no longer ritual. It was promise. Spira will stand without temples, without sacrifice. We will honor the dead by refusing to follow them. The crowd below didn't cheer. They listened. Waka raised his son to the morning light, sunlight that no longer carried the stain of fear. The boy blinked, laughed, reached for the gulls circling above. No longer sin's vultures, just birds. In Luca, the Blitzball League resumed, not as distraction, but as celebration. Fans cheered without mourning cloaked beneath. Teams played not to forget, but to remember why they played. Even the temples changed, not destroyed, unmade. Their stones repurposed for homes, for gardens, for songs. Tidus didn't return, but Spira didn't try to resurrect him. They remembered him not as myth, but as truth, a dream that died so others could wake. And when Yuna walked the beach alone, sometimes the tide whispered his name. Not always, just enough. Just once, she looked up and smiled. Where gulls once circled sin's shadow, they now drew simple patterns over clear water. Maps for a world that must learn to follow its own sky.